Special thanks for joining us if you're in Alberta tonight, because we went from minus 30 something to almost positive territory in a 24-hour period, and it's sunny out there. So I wouldn't blame you if you were out having a stroll. Though we do have a very tempting lineup of whiskey for you tonight. In addition to our good friend Dave Worthington, I have my colleague Kurt Robinson joining us tonight for the tasting. We are, as always, very grateful to Dave for agreeing to do one of these tastings when it is starting basically tomorrow where he is. So yeah, the wee small hours of tomorrow, Dave, and we certainly are grateful to have you. And I think since the last time we did a tasting, you've had a bit of a promotion. You're not just boutique-y Dave anymore, are you?
Yeah, most of the time, but yeah, I'm allowed to talk about all the whiskies now, which is a lot more fun, definitely. No rugby. I was watching the highlights of the England game before I came in. I was sitting up here watching the highlights because I missed it this afternoon. Yeah, I'm allowed to talk about all whiskey now, so that's cool. I'm looking after lots of whiskies, but still boutique-y Dave most of the time. But it allows me to talk about the darkness whiskies, and so can do darkness tastings. So that's one of our other lines of the sort of sherry finished whiskies, and all the new whiskies that are coming out. And I can talk about Character of Islay, and I can talk about the and whiskies that some of the Master of Malt whiskies Atom. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, you know what, Dave, that reminds me, we've got some of those coming. There was a pricing error, I think, when they first approached us with the darkness whiskies, but we pushed back on it because they looked a little odd, and they sorted them out for us. So we've got some darkness coming in the spring at some point too.
Nice. Yeah, where darkness came used to be part of boutique-y whiskey. Basically, we'd buy a parcel of whiskey and 60 litres would go into a quarter cask, and the boutique release would go out, and a little while later the darkness release would come out. And sometimes you could be at the show with both of the whiskies at the same time. So this is what we bought and put it in a boutique, and this is what we've done by putting it in Oloroso for 6 months or PX for 6 months, and you can try, see the difference. So this is where it started and what it came to us as a boutique, and this is where we finished it. So that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no,
but
that's
it rarely happened.
Well, we might be bugging you to do a darkness tasting for us at some point in the future. So.
Absolutely, anytime.
So Dave, before we get rolling too far into this, obviously this is there's some very kind of cool whiskeys in this range, whiskeys that we don't see very often. And I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how the range was chosen. Like, how did the Boutique-y Whisky Company decide to pick these dozen whiskeys, 11 of which we were fortunate to get in Canada? How did they come about choosing these 11 whiskeys to celebrate the birthday?
Well, we saved some, we had some scotch that we wanted for our birthday, for our 10th birthday, that we've been sort of stockpiling, which is the big guns in our scotch release. But for the world whiskies that we brought together from France, from really some of our favorites, as the whiskey team, the four of us that are in the whiskey team, Sam, my boss, Toby, the cask buyer, Felix, the buyer, and myself, we've got our favorites. And Ellesburn has been one of those whiskies that has really, really impressed me. Armoric from France, I remember tasting them long ago, and it was okay. And I remember bumping into them in a whiskey festival in Denmark. I thought, well, I'm going to go and try them. And I thought, man, this is seriously good now, and started chatting to them straight away and said, do you fancy doing a collaboration together? And yeah, they were dead up for it and sold us some casks. So I'm really impressed with Armoric. The Christian Druin was Toby's coupe. That is, it is a little bit of liquid history. Our first Calvados, our first boutique brandy. That is an early landed, the last of the early landed Calvadoses. It's not allowed to happen anymore. And it is the very last cask of a parcel of casks that came in from this very well-renowned Calvados maker in France. And everybody loves Zidane, Patrick Van Zidane. Everyone loves Millstone. And when he saw it was our birthday, he dug out a couple of special casks for us. And one of them was a 25-year-old, which we're going to taste tonight, which is, I can't believe that he sold it to us. Yeah, just some really special whiskey, and we needed a blend. We wanted a birthday blend, so we let Sam have a play in his lab, which we're going to taste in a minute. And Taiwan, we've been blown away by the Nantao lineup. Let me put the lineup up for the whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our whole. Is that the one? Yeah, that's the one. You can see that, can't you? Because when I do that, it disappears, and I get a little tiny strip down here, and I can see. I thought I'd sharing the rugby with you, which is on pause on the other screen over here. Yeah, that's a complete lineup with our birthday banners, all in the languages of the distilleries. So Ellsburn in German, and Armoric in French, and Dutch, and Tennessee Rye. Well, we've loved this Tennessee Rye that we've been buying, and this one has been a sherry finished. I don't know if you've got some of that coming in, and so the Nantao. Really impressed with this. It's like stepping back in time and tasting whiskey. Yeah, the distillery that was set up in the 80s, running distillation techniques as in the 80s, although it was mothballed for a little while before it actually came to life. So yeah, we're pretty impressed with what Nantao have been doing. I think the whiskey community is that Omar is their release that you see occasionally out there in the field. And as soon as we release it, it disappears instantly. That disappeared in, I don't know, 15 minutes or something when we released it. The same with the Clynelish and same with the Ben Nevis of our special ones. And what we wanted to do with our Scotch is we wanted, we don't have a master blender or we don't have a distillery, we don't have a master distiller. But we do have Emily Chappell, and she is our master distiller because she distills our label briefs into something comprehensible, because we give her a pretty incomprehensible label brief sometimes, and she's just in our head. And we said, well, what we want you to do this time is actually do the style of art that you would generally do. We want to kind of simplify it, strip it back, because she does a lot of silk screen printing. So we wanted her to take elements of the original labels and create something that she could create on a silk screen. And that's what she's done with these labels here. So she's reimagined the original labels that she's been drawing for the last 10 years and brought elements together. And she's even sneaked one of our own projects into our Clynelish label with the third eye on our Clynelish cat, because it's something she's got as part of her own art, because she is a freelance illustrator as the Mutant Mule, which is a load of three-eyed beings. We're a big fan of our Mutant Mule site as well. So all of these were available as a limited edition print as well, and I want to get her to print some t-shirts off of these because I think these labels are just fantastic. Well, so that was the idea of the birthday. So yeah, our favorites from right across the range of world whiskies that we've bottled recently that we've been really impressed with, and then to some really special Scotch whiskies that we put the little gold foil over the top of all of our birthday. We bought gold foil caps for a party, It's a little bit of fun there. So should we get into the birthday blend?
Yeah, let's start with that.
Okay, there it is. It's our standard birthday. It's our blend #1 label, but it is a blend that Sam's put together. We bottled it at 46%. It is mostly 10-year-old. There's nothing special about it. It was just really, we wanted a toasting blend, and it has actually been rather good. It's mostly an Edinburgh grain distillery, 10 years old, and it mixed some 25-year-old Ardbeg into it. Our Isla number 2, we had some in a jug. I thought we'd put it in there just to give it a bit of oomph. And it really is just a smashing blend. Like, cheers, happy birthday, Boutique-y, and drink it. We didn't want to be complex. It really was just for celebrating something, a toast, a birthday. It wasn't a huge batch, something like 300 bottles, just under 350 bottles, 350 bottles on the labels. I don't think we got that many. And it's just really sweet, buttery, and a little bit of sort of campfire, beach campfire smoke coming through.
Mhm.
And that's that 25-year-old Isla number 2 that we popped into it. Oh, and it really is just fun. Cheers, happy birthday, and smash, but sensibly, responsibly.
Yeah, just, some 25-year-old Isla malt with something a little younger, and just a simple blend.
Yeah, just a very, very, 2 casks basically coming together. A toasting. Yeah, well aged.
Kurt, what do you think of that? Something
It's super easy going, actually. The peat is really, really faint on it. Almost invisible on the nose at first. Tons of like strawberry notes to me, a little bit of shortcake or angel food cake or something going on there with it. And really, really quite pretty, really just fruity and easy going. I like that.
Aye.
Nice level of peat on that too.
So tame, so balanced.
Yes, I mean, Sam's his blends obviously, balance is really key for any blend, and so he does spend a little bit of time bringing these together about the right balance of the flavors. But yeah, we just needed something quickly for this one, and we had a lot of, we wanted it to be a 10-year-old, and we had some 10-year-old Edinburgh grain, North British. I just wanted to change it slightly as a blend and put something interesting in it that would that soft sort of peatiness coming through there, just to build on it. And I think it's done that beautifully.
That's gorgeous.
And it's disappeared. We haven't got any. I know where there are a few bottles in the UK and some of our partners, but there's not an awful lot of it about. Ours disappeared pretty damn quickly.
Is there thoughts of having something like this as kind of a core kind of thing going forward?
We're talking, see, blends don't, we'd love to do a core. And I've said that, blends and blended scotches don't seem to sell too well still. Blended grains, especially when they're, we're going to try one in a minute. Blended grains, especially when they're from closed distilleries, the blended grains seem to go okay. But blended malts, even they can hang around for a little while, even though they're not blended malts. Like a teaspoon malt, people have this. I line them up on the counter when I go to a show, and we used to have in big writing single malt whiskey, blended malt whiskey for teaspoon malts, and people would come up and say, "I'll try the single malt. I'll try the single malt." Oh, don't give me any blends. I mean, he said, "You don't even know what this blended malt is." Yeah, it's a teaspoon Balvenie. It was a 24-year-old, 23-year-old Burnside. No, I don't want to do blends. I don't drink blends. I said, "You don't even know what's in this thing. Okay, you don't want blends, but your friends, they can have a sip of this, and I'm going to tell them what it is, but you don't want it, so I'm not going to pour you one."
We had a chat about that the other day about the blended issue. There's so many brilliant ones out there, and it's just hard to get people to actually pay attention. But I think what does happen, we've seen it with guys like John Glazer and stuff, a bit of transparency as to what's going into the blends and blended malts really helps customers get involved. Like if you can tell them, when we had the no names, for example, if you can tell them there's some Talisker in there or some Ardbeg in there or something like that, that's enough of an enticement for a lot of people to want to see what the DNA is. They want to chase it a little bit, right?
Yeah, but like William Grant and Sons don't sell single malt to anybody, so it all comes out as blended malt. If you want a Balvenie from William Grant and Sons, you're buying Burnside. and you have to bottle it as a blended malt, and most of the time you can't name it. You can't even put Burnside on it or Wardhead on it, and people just see blended malt and just walk away, despite it being 20 something years old and at a really bargain price. If you say that's a Piddick or it's a Balvenie, it surprises me. It's just that mentality that people have that I don't drink blends, or we do. And unfortunately, that it is changing. But yeah, sometimes these people come to a whiskey show and they have these. I can only drink single malt. I smash through far too much blended Scotch whiskey because I love drinking whiskey. Bottom line, and every day drinking blended Scotch whiskey is an awful lot nicer on my budget. Allows you to play with the nicer ones a bit later on. Okay, should we get onto something a little bit more serious?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
So we got blow the candles out and let's move over to a blended grain. So this is a blended grain. It's a 45-year-old. It's our third batch of this blended grain. It's from 2 long closed distilleries, so just 2 distilleries. One of them was only operating for a very short period of time, 22 years. Both of these grains come from 1976, which was the long hot summer here in the UK, and not many people remember it because most people weren't alive in it. But I was a boy, and it was a wonderful summer. This is just spectacular, just like old grains could be. I don't know if you've ever seen our original label, but it was this bright blue. The brief that we gave Emily for the original label was all the tasting notes of old grains. So we had pencil shavings, we had little fruit birds, we had a big galleon ship, like a tea clipper made out of all the wood was cinnamon sticks, and the masts were cinnamon rolls, and lots of vanilla, all the tasting notes. And Emily's reimagined it as a treasure map on this label, which is it's one of my favorite labels ever. And just put that on a bright blue t-shirt. It's just so summery. Yes, she's got all the notes on this label, the little vanilla flowers, the pencil shavings off the volcano there, the fruit. You can see the galleon sailing away, cinnamon logs burning away, fruit trees, bananas. Everything that was on the label has been put into this one. And this one was 76. So yes, back in the 1970s, we had 12 grain distilleries in Scotland. We lost 7 of those and ended up with 5, and then 2 more were built. Loch Lomond came in the 90s as a second grain distillery, and there's the new one, which is Glen Turner Grain Distillery. So it's only about 10 years old. But this is north of Scotland, which closed in 1980. That was the first one that closed, and Port Dundas was the last one, closed in 2010. And this is a marriage of Carsbridge, which closed in 1983, which is in the Falkirk area, Carsbridge, Cambus, all of that sort of central belt. And so North of Scotland was only around for 22 years. And we have bottled all of those closed grain distilleries now, even Dumbarton, and that was the last one we can. And even North of Scotland, we managed to find a few casks for that and bottled a couple of batches of North of Scotland. So I mean, that is as rare as rock and horse shit as well. That is in these 2. But yes, this is just a beautiful blended grain, isn't it? Something a little special.
There's definitely those hallmarks of grain, like you just said, like all those notes we typically associate, but there's a lot more kind of luscious fruit than I expected for grains. I think typically you find those really, really deep fruit tones, and moving into tropicals and stuff in malt so much more readily and so much earlier than you find them in grains. I find grains, you got to go really, really deep in years to start hitting those tones. It's probably because you distill so many of the esters away as you're going through it. But this is pretty. It's really fruity, way fruitier than I expected.
Grain, yeah, they don't really. Yeah, the esters are being made in the cask because distillation techniques over there is not to have fermentation is not to have those sort of esters. But it is fruity. Yeah, it is fruity, and that's that long age in the casks, and they've been fairly, looking at the colour of it, fairly inert casks. They're not putting it. It's just taking its time and slowly maturing. It is a beautiful colour.
Dave, I was going to comment that I think that's one of the things that is so interesting to me about this, because we've seen plenty of old grains that are good, but heavily cask influenced, by which I mean mostly like what it's pulled out of the wood over 40, 50 years. There is some wood tones coming from this, but it's so delicate and so fruity after such a long time that it's mostly those oxidative esterification notes from that long maturation in the cask. And it's a beautiful whiskey. Shawn and I had the chance to try this and some of the other whiskeys we're going to try tonight in London, and we're blown away by them, albeit with a giant footnote that we've been drinking for hours and continue drinking. So it's hard to be like super confident, but like I remember the blended grains stood out when we did the tasting.
I drank a lot of that on the stand. We had that. Didn't we have that in Paris as well?
This is my third time trying it. If I'm being accurate.
It's beautiful. We're just talking to Sam the other day. Might be able to get a little bit more of this. So like another. We're hoping that we can get another batch of this.
Oh well, mark us down. It's
talking about that now. Just talking about that just last week because it was so good. Yes, and it's all gone as far as I'm aware.
Give our friend Sam our best as well too.
Absolutely.
Andrew, you've had the Glenfarclas Andrew Ego series. What about a Boutique-y Sam Simmons and Andrew series now?
Oh, we got a follow-up bottling.
Yeah, man.
What else can Sam and I urinate on in Scotland?
Maybe not make that the focal point. Maybe make you two the focal point and skip the urination part. But find it either way. We'll make it work.
Yeah, Sam's got a good sense of humor, but also too has a stature that could be both celebrated and exploited for humorous benefit. So.
It's a lot of fun working with Sam, and that silly little video we did outside Australia House was all his directing. It was all him, his idea, and he was up there early and scouting that whole place and said, "Well, we could do this bit here, this bit there," because we just released a series of Australian whiskies for our Return to Oz series, batch 2, a collection of 10 Australian distilleries, one brandy, 1 rye, and 8 malts, and we did a little sort of promo video. Just took a cameraman down there and running around outside Australia House. That's a lot of fun, and surprised we didn't have the police come and move us on. It wasn't until we'd finished filming that a security guy came out of Australia House and said, "Oh, what the hell are you doing here?" And we had a bloody great camera. Just messing around? No, you're not messing around with that bit of kit. We had people following us. We had the crowds all watching from the coffee shops. We had when we were doing some of the silly things across the road and things like that, we had some of the people who were walking along with us suddenly doing exactly the same as we were doing. Yeah, it's quite amusing.
Well, it's good.
Right, a lovely blended grain to start a tasting. I mean, that's a little treat. 45 years old.
And I get even a little bit sentimental, even for the closed grain distilleries too. I think with these kind of things, people have to appreciate it's liquid history. These are the kind of things that a lot of people in the future are never going to have a chance at, whether it's malt, grain, whatever. People just aren't going to be able to experience these things. It's pretty cool.
Now, we didn't blend this grain. This came to us blended. So someone had put this in cask to blend, and
it's pre-blended.
Yeah. It was we bought it we wouldn't have pre-blended it. I mean, if we'd had a cask of Carsbridge and a cask of north of Scotland, we'd want that as separate releases. I think anybody would, but you know, lots of these things have happened over the years that old grain's been put together and chucked in a corner of a warehouse and forgotten about. Hi. Okay, shall we move on to anyone, any comments? I can't see any comments on here, but I hope you enjoy. Oh, there is chat. There it is. That's where it is.
There was suggestion that perhaps a Monuments Desecration series is in order. Maybe not. I mean, but yeah, sheer decadence. James Bourne was saying. Reminds me of mango ice cream I had a couple of years ago from Jake Libby. So yeah, a bunch of comments coming through there about them.
I've got a little message saying Nick has entered the waiting room.
I just let Nick in, and Nick, I'm gonna fire the order into the chat here for you, just so that you can catch up with us. We've done the birthday 10-year and the 45-year-old blended grain, but the rest of the lineup, we're just about to start on the Ellsburn.
Little tiny German distillery, Ellsburn. Now this is our third batch. Just superb. I have been blown away by this distillery. Let's go there. Up in the Harz Mountains. I mean, you would apparently, if you were driving through this, it reminds you of Speyside. I've never been this part of Germany, but it has sort of those rolling hills and Speyside region. They've just been making superb whiskey. They have a very, very high angel share. That's down to the ventilation regulations of this part of Germany. And they have an awful lot of padlocks on everything. They have a spirit safe within a spirit safe. And padlocks, everything. Everything is locked. And that's shown on our label with all these locks. And the chains around there. They have a local legend of the dragon, and so we've got the dragon, which is the local legend. There's lots of myths and legends around this area of Germany, fairy tales and myths and legends. And we've got him dressed up as a tax inspector with his little red book there, because it is about the regulations there. So he's got a little monocle on and his little German hat, and he's carrying a red book, which is like the budget book. And that's our little story there. The distillers are above there because in the old days they used to live above the distillery. And big music fans. Anna is the head distiller there. Family distillery. They use. They're only a tiny little distillery. We don't see this stuff coming outside of Germany hardly ever. I've never even heard of this little distillery. They have a bit of a cult following in their area, and people will queue right around the distillery when there's a new release coming out. They're quite social on the social media now, and being quite active with Anna and her distillery. This used to be called Glen Ells until the SWA said, no, you can't call it Glen. That's Scottish. Ells being the Ellsburn part of it. Yeah, I can hide this into this stands up against big Scotch whiskies. They use a lot of new casks, first fill, big sherry cask, big wine cask, and this is an ex-Reeve Salts cask, and we bottled this at natural cask strength. So just 7 years old, natural cask strength, 48.7 is the angel share that they're losing. And we would get just over 350 bottles, 395 on the label, so about 350 bottles, because we always have to buy a few extra labels. So Results is a really overlooked sort of Grenache-based dessert wine, and it really fortified wine, neutral grain spirit, grape spirit, and aged outside. And this is just delicious. Big Speyside. The three that we had, I could put these in and tell you is a Glenfarclas and certainly the big sherry one that we had. I mean, you could put it up against 20-year-old whiskey and it sits there beautifully. Just so impressed with the distiller. the fineness of these cuts that they're doing.
And Dave, is this full term maturation 7 years in Rivisaltas?
Yep. Yeah, they use a lot of, they only use casks once, generally. It's something they do, and it is the high price of these whiskies, and they're not cheap whiskies. They seriously aren't. But then when you say this is, if I could lose this in a big lineup of much older whiskies, yeah, you can understand where it's coming from. It's my nephew, if you heard that.
The nose is really pretty. You can tell it's wine cask when you get to the palate, especially the back end of it. But it's the nose is actually way more delicate than the palate. Palet's a little bit heavier.
The palate to me is very jammy and very vegetal. So I'm getting like a mix of like fruit berry jams, but also like roasted carrots, turnips. It's
very jammy.
Palate to me.
It's like those fruit type bars where they hide some vegetables in there to make you all healthy and crap. And you're like, why carrots in my treat? Come on.
My fruit source, my daily routine.
That's right.
How I get in, being ADD and texture averse. That's how I cram in my daily allotment of fruit.
Yeah, so this is the third batch. Our first batch was, I think, a big sherry, and I'm sure we've had a PX as well, or was it a Madeira? But yeah, this is lots of rich dark fruit, lots of cocoa, really chocolatey on the nose when I first poured this. I mean, so chocolatey, and it's got that sort of that Glenelg spirit, was that sort of floral character that comes through.
It's kind of a soft kind of chocolate to me, almost Ovaltine kind of.
I've just been blown away with this little distillery, and yeah, they seem to be keen to work with us. Talk to them. They've been giving us some really lovely casks. I must admit, it's been certainly seeing the change to the attitude from a lot of these distillers to boutique-y whiskey from when we first started and approaching people to now people approaching us, which is really lovely. And then when you do ask them about sending some cask samples, they really do take time. We need to go in and do some. They're checking their own casks before they sample it and say, no, this is the best one. These are the best, but these are the ones we want to send boutique-y, because they want to give us their best, which is pretty special, and they're really seeking out the best whiskies that they can get to send to you, because they want to. Yeah, as an independent bottler, it's fantastic. They just want us to have their best stuff, so we're showing them in a new light. And really, we're just putting this in a new market, and if they can capitalize on that, that's great.
So you guys, over the years, not to detour too much, but I think it's kind of one of those things that everybody in the room will find fascinating. You guys have been able to source distilleries and casks of ages that are kind of all over the place, that a lot of independent bottlers don't seem to be getting access to. It's almost like you've got a behind the scenes connection here. Like we still on our shelf right now have 27, 28-year-old, 29-year-olds like Brooklady and Glenhavens and stuff like that. Nobody else is getting these things. How are
Glengarry.
Yeah, Glengarry. Like, that's crazy. How are you getting your hands on this stuff?
We 15 years of Atom. You know, we're owned by the Atom Group, Master of Malt. Atom Group is an acronym for a taste of malt. That's what the Atom part stands for. No, not many people did. A taste of malt. And yeah, we've got those connections that we've built up over those 15 years of trading. More than that now. I mean, 15 years was 3-4 years ago, so 18 years. Those connections within the industry, that we're here to stay, that we're passionate about great whiskey. So it's having those connections and being able to buy them as we've grown. So certainly before we were sold. It was growing organically. We're always feeding back in, buying boutique, buying whiskey, bottling it, and then literally selling that and going and buying the next cask and investing in what we believe in. Going out there and sourcing these casks, and we've had a really good buying team with some great connections. And certainly when it comes to world distillery, we're all out there. We're the whiskey team are whiskey geeks, nerds, and we're at whiskey shows and we're looking. My little blog was called Whiskey Discovery. It was always about the next one. And as soon as I get to a whiskey show, I don't want to taste the current stuff. I know what that's like. Yes, I know it's all great. Glenfiddich, the whole range, superb. Yeah, what's this little distillery from Denmark? I've never heard of them. Let's go and talk to these. I'm really interested in finding what these guys are doing. These guys in France, these guys in Germany. Okay, tell me about it. Let's taste you. Can I taste your new? First question: can I taste your new? Have you got any new make spirit? Can I taste it? Because then I can get a feel. I feel that I can get a feel by tasting a new make spirit. So I'm always asking for new make spirit when I'm meeting a new distiller, and generally when they're at a whiskey show, they've got some under the table. So I want to taste that new make spirit, because if that new make spirit is sweet, hitting the sweet spot, then I'm going to be. If it's okay, it's not quite right, then I don't want to talk anymore. Or no, I'll tell them. But yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But yeah, we're all doing exactly the same. The whole team. Whenever we're out, we're talking to people, new distilleries, especially. Because anyone can bottle Scotch. I mean, we're passionate whiskey geeks, which is why we put a whole series of Australian whiskies out, because Australian whiskey are making some amazing stuff. I mean, we get a load of cask samples of Scotch coming in all the time from all these different brokers, and then we get this pile of Australian whiskey, and we're putting it up against 20-year-old malt lacks. I'm thinking, well, this is standing straight up against it, because the Australian whiskey industry has got the wine industry on their doorstep as well. So they have access to all these wine and sherry casks sort of next door, and they're using them. So it's someone's got a bottle of Sullivan's Cove, single cask, one still. They only got one. They can only make a very, very limited quantity. Yeah, superb stuff. But all over the world, they're making some of the. We were tasting some Finnish whiskey not so long ago at the last tasting we did there from our Norwest. I just blown away with what Finland is doing at the moment. Finnish rye, it's just superb.
I think we have 4 different boutique Finnish whiskeys on the shelf right now. Andrew could probably confirm, but I think there's 4 different ones right now, if you're curious.
I think it's 3.
3?
Yeah, from Finland. Yeah. I think there's Helsinki. Yeah. I think there's Kiro and Tirampeli. So 2 ryes, 1 malts.
Right, but we might have 2 different Tirampellis at the moment. 2 different batches.
You got one which is lightly peated in a refill bourbon, and the other one would be a big sherry. Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, superb malt. Absolutely.
All right, next one.
Right. Shall we go on to our Aberlour? Aberlour, the mash tun, is on our label, and it is a very blue label. So we've gone sort of a bluey purple, and we've turned the mash tun pub. Emily's thought, well, I'll turn it into a mash tun, and so she's broken down the pub into a mash tun itself, and we've got all that foaming goodness coming out the top of it in a beautiful color. This is a 31-year-old. This is from a single barrel. It was distilled in 1990, and we have bottled this at natural cask strength. We didn't actually. Normally, we put a little label on the corner, as you see in the previous one. Can I go backwards? Little NCS up in that top left-hand corner, which means natural cask strength. We never used to say this on our labels. Some of them would be, some of them wouldn't be. It wasn't ever important to us. What was important was about what was in the bottle. But people want to know, so we have been putting NCS. But we didn't want to ruin Emily's label here, because this was her art. And she's done these in silk screens, like I was saying, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's the oldest Aberlour we've ever bottled. I mean, there is obviously older Aberlours out there. It's not the oldest Aberlour. It's almost 32. It's almost 32, but it's not. It's a 31-year-old, and it's really fresh, and you can the color of it is it's not overwood. You see, I like this one because it's not a lot of it left. It's just been in a single barrel. It must have been used because it's not overly woody, and it really is a lot of fruitiness, little zestiness coming through there. Still quite lively.
Get a little bit of tobacco. Slightly,
sorry,
a little bit of tobacco there for me too. Fermenty, not burning tobacco yet.
I got a little bit of licorice, but loads of tinned peaches and apricot. But that sort of licoricey, tobacco. I can see where you can come from as a pipe smoker. I love that label. Again, another T-shirt. So we just let Emily loose.
And Dave, for that one, I think you put it on a pink T-shirt and you just leave the colors as they are.
Yeah, isn't that exactly that background is what you want. It's a pink T-shirt. Yeah. See, all of these colors of the whole series are actually days of the week in Thai Buddhist colors. So pink is Tuesday. So you have a T-shirt for every day of the week. Yellow's Monday, pink is Tuesday, Wednesday's green. What's the one we didn't have? Is the 50-year-old. Yeah, there's a color for every day of the week. So I can get 5 T-shirts with all these labels on. I've got the one for every day of the week. Licorice all sorts. Someone's put in there. Yes, licorice is what I picked.
Whomever iPhone is nailed it. Like the palette for me is just so much licorice all sorts. Those goodies, the little candy coated pieces of licorice, the fruity flavors. Kurt, this reminds me a bit of that whiskey Fassel Aberlour we have.
The whiskey what?
The whiskey Fassel Aberlour.
Yeah, it's that really oily big one.
Yeah. Because the nose is super tropical and fruity.
Yeah, there's loads of
just so much candy and licorice tones.
I'm actually digging the palate a little bit more than the nose even. The palate's really juicy.
Mm-hmm.
It's delicious. Oh, might have to have another little drop of that.
Oh. For the back end of this tasting, which maximizes or it maxes out my glassware, but I went with the mega enhancer glasses for this one because these are the 4 that I was the most curious about, and I really wanted to kind of capture as much of the aromas and the flavor on them as I can. But maybe it's the glass, Kurt. I love the palate on this, but the nose, I just can't stop nosing this one.
Could be the glass. I'm finding the nose is pretty, but a little bit tame. You can tell it's kind of a lower ABV, but to me, I think we've had this discussion before. The older I get, the less I'm that guy that was enamored with really, really high test whiskeys. I kind of find my happy place is sort of between about 44 or so, if it's still unchill filtered and still kind of textural and stuff, up to about 52 or so. That's where I really, really love whiskey. And this kind of falls right in that textural place for me too.
My sweet spot's probably 48 to 50. I can be more specific about it. And I even love some of those Bruichladdich releases they do at 50%, because I think it's a perfect drinking strength for some of those young Bruichladdich whiskeys.
Yeah, a lot of boutique has been around that sort of 50-ish up until fairly recently, when we've started moving into sort of bottling some of them at cask strength. And all of these are fairly low, as I just quickly scanning across here. They're all around the sort of 48 to 50, apart from the last one, the Ben Nevis that we've got on the list today is a little bit higher. But generally, we've been bottling at that. But we have been, we bottled one at 67 not so long ago, an English whiskey 12-year-old cask strength.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we see some real variance coming from you guys. Like blindly, there is no way I would, in my top 15 guesses, go to Aberlour for this one. In your warehouses of goodies, treats, oddballs, whatever else, are you guys sitting on things like Brora or Port Ellen or Little Mill or things like that?
Oh, maybe have some. Yeah, no, we haven't seen any Bora for a long time. Port Ellen, we've had Port Ellen, but we did put that out in Wind and Wave for our Isla series of whiskies with the posh glasses. So we have bottled Port Ellen with Boutique. In fact, Port Ellen was one of the first releases that we ever brought to market in September 2012 on our first 4 releases. Were one of them was a Port Ellen. So we have had a number of batches of Port Ellen. We have had some Little Mill, and we have got some in glass at the moment under Master of Malt. We bottled some Little Mill recently, but have we got anything else? We said we got this bit of north of. We've got some old grains. We've got some old malts. We've got some cracking old malts coming. We're just doing some labels for them at the moment, which is for Q3, which I can't tell you about at the moment, but yeah, it's some seriously old Scotch that we're putting in it's the oldest one I've seen that we bottled. The last time we bottled it was a 29-year-old. That's all I'm going to tell you at the moment. Quick look into the history books.
Yeah. Interesting. So Andrew, I think we at some point need another closed distillery bottling as a store cask. I think Port Ellen was Imperials. We had our 4 Imperials.
We've had 4 Imperials. We got pretty lucky on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've never bottled Imperial. I would love to have an Imperial. Yeah. We've bottled all the closed grain distilleries. We haven't bottled a lot of closed malt distilleries. We have had some Lady Burn. We've had some Rosebank, Port Ellen, Cappadonic. Haven't had an awful lot of the malts. There's a lot of malt distilleries that did close, but we have bottled all 7 of the closed distilleries, grain distilleries, Canvas and Carsbridge and Port Ellen. Yeah, but yeah, this is a beautiful Aberlour, and really pleased that this was in the lineup. So we haven't had any old Aberlour for a long time. I think we used to have a 22-year-old, which was beautiful. And then we had some younger Aberlours, and so fruity. I mean, all the distillery character was coming through. But yeah, to have this in the background was a nice to have this out for our 10th birthday. Yeah, kind of special.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, the second I saw the list, and I don't know if it was Kurt I was talking to, but I was like, yeah, this has got to be included in the lineup because so few people have tried anything but young Aberlour, like maybe 16, 18 years of age. It's so rare for anyone to get to try anything older than that.
And I think it's abundantly clear too, just as Dave was hinting at there too, we're whiskey geeks. We want to try the things too that we don't often get shots at. And 31-year-old Aberlour in a different style than what the distillery is throwing at us is right in our wheelhouse. That's cool.
Aye. Yeah, if we just waited a little bit longer, it would have been 32, but we would have missed our birthday. So we thought, no, just get it. 31,
it was ready.
32.
It was ready. It was its time.
Aye, it was its time. Oh, so good. I do love it.
All right, I think we need to go to the Netherlands because I'm already nosing the next whiskey.
We shall do. It's a 25-year-old single malt from the Netherlands. And it's got that signature Sedam little sort of whiff of fennel, and I love that little whiff of fennel that I get from them. I'm just stunned that he would let us have this magnificent 25-year-old single malt from the Netherlands. It's one of his earliest single malt distillations. This is a guy who grew up in a distillery. Him and his brother grew up in a distillery. His father was a distiller, one of the big Dutch distillers, thought he could make a better job himself, started his own distillery. These 2 brothers grew up in a distillery, and Patrick cut his first spirit at the age of 12. This guy is passionate about, passionate about distilling and passionate about big sherry casks. And this is from a big old sherry cask. This sherry cask was probably around 100 years old because it was taken out of a bodega. There's no wood in this there's very little wood in this 25-year-old single malt, because the cask was knackered. It was been in a Solara system, maturing sherry, but it does give those great big sherry flavors without turning it into chewing pencils.
Mhm.
Spectacular.
Yeah. Dave, I love the story about how Patrick Van Sweetum, when he decided was going to make single malts, tried to source the same sherry casks that everyone in Scotland is trying to use, but couldn't get them, and somehow stumbled upon a source that he's continued to tap into of like sherry maturation casks.
Mm.
And some of the best sherried whiskeys, especially young sherried whiskeys we've seen, have been like Millstone casks. Like he's been able to source some absolutely gorgeous sherry casks.
I just look at the color. It's opaque. I can just about see the screen through this, but it's not like chewing a pencil. It's just all the color. I mean, there is a real birthday treat. This was it's been his whole life in this Oloroso cask that came out of a Solara system, and we bottled this at natural cask strength. That's 46.5% is natural cask strength. We have the little NCS there up in the top left hand corner. Patrick he just seems to be every distiller's favorite. He's a huge favorite of ours. He is absolutely passionate about copper pot stills. Everything I have tasted that this man has made, I've fallen in love with. It was the first rye whiskey I ever tasted was a Millstone, and it was started my love affair for rye whiskey. And he generally does a sort of 50-50 mix of malted and unmalted rye, and generally puts it into new oak, new charred oak, American oak, but he has put some in sherry. It's big. Someone's just mentioned celery notes, which is where I see where you get that. I call it wild fennel, which is similar celery, wild fennel. It just reminds me of a whiskey is subjective, and it also, whiskey brings back memories, and so this brings me to the mountain on Tenerife, which at certain times of the year is covered in wild fennel. And you can just walk through this and just brushing these wild fennel plants, and it just smells amazing. And that's what I'm getting here. But yeah, celery, same thing. But all those prunes and plums and
it's a little bit soupy and savory on the nose to me too, almost like a little bit of bouillon or something like that.
Yeah.
The palate takes, like, the back end of the palate just dive bombs into those like beautiful, greasy, oily, dark, dried, when you open a bag of dried fruits and you get like all those tropical kind of tones, but it's all greasy when you feel them, prunes and deeper into the tropicals.
I have them in my porridge every morning with a little splash of green isle.
Oh.
It's a cracker. I mean, this is seriously a little bit of history. At the time, I don't think he has actually released as anything as old as this. This is the oldest Millstone I've seen. And I'm pretty certain it's from his oldest distillations. It was distilled in 1996. So at the very, very start of their whiskey making history.
That was the year Kurt and I finished high school, Dave.
96. 96. No, you couldn't. What? Yeah. 96. I was boat building in Thailand.
Yeah.
This is a style now that doesn't really exist. It's I remember old Longmorns and stuff like that getting close to this. Some older Macallans and stuff like that. It's crazy to me that we're now having to look to quirkiness and outside the box and literally outside of Scotland to find the whiskeys that are in this style. Cavallan's got some too. Things like that, where we hunt for these really cool big sherry whiskeys that lean into the fruits deeper than just tannins, and as Dave said, deep woody tones and overly spiced. Like New School of Sherry is a little bit challenging sometimes for me, but this drink's like old school whiskey, like really cool.
It's super old school, and you know, most New School sherry whiskeys where you're getting into this kind of depth of color, there's not a lot of subtlety there, and it's incredible that you can still have subtlety with such a depth of natural color. But you know, we've talked about this too, Dave, like and it's not always an easy sell, because people that want Macallan or old Scotch, old sherried Scotch, like you can show them stuff like this. You can often even taste them on stuff like this, but they're like, yeah, but it's Dutch. And there's this weird bias against it, which is crazy.
Put this in a Macallan decanter.
The sad thing is, this is the whiskey that Macallan should be on its best day, but rarely is anymore.
I haven't tasted any Macallan for a long time, I must admit. Apart from the ones that we've bottled over the years, I haven't gone out and seeked it, I must admit. No, it's good. Everything this guy does, he makes a wonderful Geneva. He makes a fabulous rye whiskey. We bottled their rum now, their Flying Dutchman rum. It's superb, and it has that signature Dutch taste. And the rye whiskey is absolutely superb. He bottled a rye. I called him up and said, "Can you tell me anything about this rye?" But we got a 9-year-old rye coming up next, and when he sent us this cask sample, a 25-year-old, he stuck in a cask sample of one of his earlier ryes, so a 9-year-old rye, and it's delicious. We just taste it. Oh God, just so good. I called him up, said, can you tell me anything? Can you tell me a little bit more about this rye? He said, yeah. How long have you got? I mean, you can't stop him talking about distillation. He loves copper pot stills. He loves distillation, and everything goes through copper pot stills. The rye, the malt, the Geneva, the rum. He's a huge, passionate distiller. Long fermentations, much longer than most people. Week-long fermentations. Crazy, beautiful person. I love him. We all love him.
And he's super keen to share his stuff too. Like, he wants you to try it, and he legitimately watches for the reactions of people.
Yeah,
because he knows he's got good shit. He knows it. Right?
He's a whiskey. Yeah, it's like all whiskey. We were talking about this the other day. Whiskey geeks. Why? What's about boutique? You know, we taste something and we want to go, oh, you got to taste this. And you know, that's really like most whiskey geeks. You know, some of the best people I've met, you know, on social media. We were all swapping samples. We'd buy something. Oh, you got to try this. I'll send you a sample. You've got to try this. And that's sort of really what our ethos is at Boutique-y. We find something. I've tasted, I've just met this guy in a whiskey show in another country. Oh man, you've got to try this. Sam, you've got to try this. Or I get something back, bring a bottle back or whatever. You've got to try this. And it might not float Sam's boat, you know, some stuff he doesn't like. You know, we're not all passionate, but we get this. It's you got to try this. That's really what we do a lot of. In fact, Toby just sent me some samples. I've got he just sent me some samples here. What did he send me? Oh, he sent me some Australian rye, but you got and a Weller that he'd bought. He said, "You got to try this, Dave." And we're still doing it amongst ourselves, you know. Aye.
Well, that's gorgeous. I mean, it was one of the best things I've tasted in London and Paris. And the funny thing is, like, I remember getting rebuffed. I went to the Macallan table because I wanted to try the 25, which I hadn't had in the longest time. And the guy wanted 4 tokens or something for it. And I was just like, no. I don't know if you remember at the whiskey show London what a token cost, Dave, because I didn't buy any.
It was 10.
10. So you wanted
£10
40
a token.
40 pounds to try Macallan 25, which probably is in retrospect fairly inexpensive, but I don't know. There was something about the whole ask that I was just like, pass. I don't need to try
Yeah,
that. I'll go back and
the token.
beg Dave for another taste of the Millstone 25.
Tokens were £10, and the guy with the bottle gets half of that.
Yeah.
So it allows us to bring half of it, not all of it, half of it. Entice us to bring bottles to open. But yeah.
Well, gorgeous.
That's lovely.
All right, we've got something that smells a little funkier coming up, Dave.
A little waxy.
Or are we going to Clynelish first?
I want to go Clynelish first. Yeah, I think Clynelish is probably a little bit lighter and delicate before we go dirty.
Let's do that.
Please, if we can go Clynelish. I think we had Clynelish in the list. I'm sure Clynelish was next. That's why I lined them up anyway.
Whether it is or not, we're going to Clynelish next.
It's 25-year-old Clynelish, 47.1. Yeah, we all love Clynelish. Don't see much of it these days, unfortunately. And this is everything you want. It's very classy, I think. I think it falls a bit short in the palate. I think the nose is delicious and it just sort of falls away very quickly. I think the finish is quite short on this one, but I still love it. And it just goes on and on. I just want it. It sold out in 15 minutes with us. It actually went live while I was in Whiskey Live Paris. We had a bottle on the stand. It went live and within 15 minutes it had all gone. I looked at the website. Is it live? Yeah, it's live. Okay, great. Everything's live. And 15 minutes later, all gone. Although I did see some at 2 British retailers last week, and I'm saying, you're not telling anyone you've got this Clynelish? Obviously not.
There's a nice mix of like honey, wax, fruit. And I'm getting like, I don't know if anyone's ever like saved the bacon fat. I know, Dave, you won't have, but if anyone has saved the bacon fat from a pan to use later for cooking, but it reminds me of like congealed bacon fat as well.
Well, that sounds dreadful.
Oh,
but this is
Dave, it's pig butter. What could be wrong with it?
96 Clynelish. That's just a hoggy. Probably destined for a blend at one time. But we managed to get hold of it and hold on to it. And classic Clynelish. Classic deliciousness. Our Clynelish label has cats on it because of the Clynelish cat, and the Brora cat, in fact, has 3 cats on it. And we have our reference. We have even part of our company handbook is got the cat memes. It's part of our culture as cat memes. We use cat memes in everything. And there is a cat meme website called Can I Has Cheeseburger, and that's where a lot of our cat memes come from. And so that's why the cheeseburgers are flying around the cat's head here. The candle is holding the candle, the waxiness of Clynelish candle, and we've got the third eye on the label there, which is the Mutant Mule that Emily does, the Mutant Mule brand, which is just fantastic. Everything's got 3 eyes in. It's just great t-shirts for the Mutant Mule. But yeah, this is a Clynelish, classic Clynelish. 47.1. It wasn't a big batch, it was just a single cask. 386 bottles on the label, but I think it was a lot. What we actually got out of that is a lot less. We always put more on the label because we lose some labels if something gets stuck in it. We sort of tend to add 10% onto our label runs because every one of our bottles are numbered. So we have bottle 1 of which is a little bit more expensive to do. So this is bottle 190 of 386. If we just bought one of 280, that would have been a much more sensible thing to do, but everyone is numbered. So you can get bottle number 1, or you can get bottle number, people try and look for these different bottles. I don't. I mean, I can't even see the numbers without my glasses, I must admit, and I have to stretch to read them. I'm not interested in the box or the number of it, but people do. That's fine. And they are numbered. I wish we wouldn't do that, to be honest.
Dave, there's been some private chatter, because I think people don't want to cause offense, but we might have a cork tainted bottle that we poured for the tasting. There's some
really?
talk of some. I mean, the funny thing is there's still some lovely notes there, both on the nose and palate, but there's definitely a little bit of wet cardboard.
Yeah. Oh no.
So.
Yeah.
I was
wondering if you were going to ask me for notes, Andrew, and I'm like, I don't know what to say here. It was the first thing I messaged to Andrew earlier when we first.
Oh no.
And then I started getting, my inbox started getting flooded from a bunch of people saying, is it just me? So yeah, I think we definitely got one that's a bit quirky here on this end.
Oh no, I hate cork. I hate it. We moved away from it. We moved back to it because of the corks falling apart.
You know what? That gamble is always worth it to me. I'm a huge proponent for cork. I know it's tough environmentally. I know there's not enough of it and all that kind of stuff. I am a huge fan of old whiskeys. I'm sure several people in this room are, and I don't mean old as in they have to be high age statement, but like going back in time. And I think we've seen some of the cool effects that aging can have in glass too. And that relies on a little bit of breathing room there. And I think cork is porous enough to allow some really cool, very, very slow oxidation to happen. So I'm willing to risk that little bit, that tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of a margin we're getting of occasional cork whiskeys. There's so few and far between. I think
we've actually been
bottles on your shelf that have aged is worth it.
We had them. I remember having the 25-year-old Ardbeg Isla number 2 in the States and having a bottle. And everyone I'd tasted lots of it. We've opened lots of them. We had, it was a big batch when we did it, and it had one in the bottle in the States, and I opened it and I poured it. And no, we can't pour that today. That's cork. Let's go under the table, and poured another one out. And the second one was fine.
Yeah.
But one of them had been stored upside down. It come maybe the whole one box had been put in a container upside down, and you're buggered, aren't you? I mean, seriously, even if you've got this way up, and it's like, it's.
I know Kurt and I have talked about this before, and it does take away some of the romance of popping the cork every time you open a bottle. But I personally, for a lot of premium and older releases, wish the industry would move in the direction that the Japanese have gone with, like the premium screw caps.
Screw caps are so much easier.
I think, I mean, the metal screw caps are useless because they thread, but those premium sort of breathable plastic ones that the Japanese have got on their whiskeys, I honestly think if the industry went that direction, it would be to everybody's benefit. But
absolutely,
it would take away a bit of an aesthetic that I'll acknowledge that I probably miss.
It does take away that sort of romance. I get what you're saying, that pop of the cork, because we moved over to the reconstituted corks a little while ago, and they still pop, but they're resin bound bits of cork, and they seal. They seal good. They always fit the bottle, and you have to push them in. They don't dry out. They don't shrink when you push them in, and the cork does. And they don't leak, and if they get shipped like this, they don't get corked. But we had so many where the glue bond between, it's just companies cutting costs and just, well, can we put less glue in the top, and then they all fall apart, and that's not great. We've had so many corks fall apart where the wooden top comes off from the reconstituted cork, and you go to open a bottle and you unwrap it and you pull it off. I'm going to get corkscrew out or your teeth out to pull the cork out. It doesn't look good. It's so frustrating, and it's completely out of our hands. And as soon as you complain, the company, supply go, oh, hands up, yeah, it was too late now. That, they've gone out into market. It's not just in our hands, it's gone to a global market, and it looks bad on us, but it's nothing that we can do apart from go back and hit them. Oh yeah, we'll fix it. We've spoken to that guy. He wasn't putting enough glue on. We've given them a slap. We've retrained him, and he's going to put the right glue on now. And then it happens again. What can you do? I mean, it's just so frustrating.
Dave, it was like a guy named Alan, and he doesn't work for them anymore. So the problem is solved.
I know I've been, I used to work in manufacturing, in engineering, and it's that same story, when you get those quality defects that a customer picks up on, and you have to go and explain it to, my background's engineer, and I always used to call my position was like the one-legged man in an ass kicking competition, because I was always sent out to fix customer problems. I wasn't the quality control manager, but I never admitted liability. And I'd go out there and take the ass kicking and then solve the problem if they wanted the problem solved. Shit happens, but you've got to solve a problem. But you have to. Frustrating. They're just making widgets. The widget is a cork, and it's all about cost. And I'm really sorry if you've got a cork sample there, because this Clynelish is delicious. I just think it falls a bit quickly off the palate. It just disappears very, very quickly.
I always want that gamble, man. Maybe it's a hot take now, considering what everybody in the room seems to be saying, but I think the industry has moved more and more and more towards security and homogeneity and yield and everything that's going to keep whiskey more stable and more consistent. And I think we all look back and go, man, whiskey was more exciting years ago. And that was because there were so many variables. And I think we're stripping those variables out one by one by one by one. And I don't know. I'll take the chances with real cork whenever I can.
I do like those glass. Someone's just mentioned, Jeff just mentioned those glass ones at Shelter Point. I just got got a bottle of tequila downstairs, Magenta tequila, and that's got a little glass pop on it, and it's beautiful. I love it. You just push it on the side and it comes up.
But Dave,
So
you'd be
classy.
surprised how many people can't figure out how to use those. Like I've literally had emails and phone calls from people asking me how to open them, and they're frustrated because they can't pull it out. And like, it's so funny when you show them, you literally just nudge it with your thumb. But yeah, I guess, to Kurt's, kind of adding on to Kurt's point, I guess you're never going to please everybody, no matter what you do.
No. Oh, the amount of people that can't get these, these little drinks by the, oops, no, I'm pointing it the right way. These little drinks by the dram things off, and they see this little wax tab here, and I think it's a pull tab, and it doesn't do it. Yeah. And then they try and cut it off, and they cut their fingers. And
I would say, how many people cut their fingers with those bottles?
Yeah.
And I'm the first one to acknowledge too, Andrew, I'm the kind of guy like Deb and Doug, and that we chase bits of the story and bits of history, and we want to know everything that's going to happen to whiskey all through the years and all that kind of stuff, going back as far as we can. I am a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the people buying this stuff, and I realize consistency is so much more important than what I'm looking for in it. So it's never me that should be pandered to.
Yeah, I've just gone back to the Ellsburn, and that is just a bouquet of flowers now. I mean, it's so floral. There's pollen smashing my nose now. I've got lily pollen. That's what it is. It's so floral. And that celery fennel on the Millstone, just lovely. I love going back to the glasses.
Yeah,
Geeks.
the Millstone nose just keeps getting better in my glass.
Yes, you got a little bit of risk is cool, I must admit. Corked whiskey is so disappointing though. So sorry about that.
Yeah, it happens. All right, Dave, we got one left. We got a Nevis to go through.
We have. It's a dirty Ben Nevis. It's another 25-year-old. It is another 1996 classic Ben Nevis. Now, this came out of a sherry butt because it's a big batch. And Emily has taken our Ben Nevis label, which is a guy sitting at the top of Ben Nevis, raising a drop of Ben Nevis to the distillery down in the background. And she's just taken the hand there, raising a toast, and she's turned it around. And I love this label too. 25 years old. This has been bottled at 55.5%. And I'm pretty certain this is at natural cask strength as well. Just trying to double check on that one. Yeah, I'm pretty certain this is. Although we can't say it on these ones because we didn't mark the labels for these because we wanted to just keep Emily's print nice and simple. What can I say? It's a much bigger batch. This was about 783, and it is just classic. We've had a few, and it's just classic Nevis. Dirty. A little funky. I like that funkiness. The funkiness of all the different esters that are going on there. Maybe it was a.
I like the palate a lot more than the nose. The nose is, I'm struggling a little bit. It's like going into a hoarder's house and there's like piles of newspaper and dust and just, you're not really sure if there's stacks of used pizza boxes and, you know, things in the corner, but
yeah,
the palate kind of redeems. And there's, it's like
it's sulfured.
Beef stock.
Yeah, someone said piles of cabbage and old cheese. Yes, it's slightly sulfured, like lots of Ben Nevises. I mean, whether that's from the sherry cask or the distillation regime at that time, and it's softened with the 25 years in the cask. I think I put overripe oranges, you know, where it's on the turn. It's got that citrus note, but it's on the turn. I've got sour apple juice, but it's waxy and yeah, funky. There's esters are coming through. Where are they coming from? I don't know. But yeah, the palate is big. It's meaty. There's rancid. There's sort of balsamic glaze. It's earthy, black pepper.
Yeah, Dave, a lot of good notes there, man. I agree with a lot of that. And I think you've said funky a couple times. Like Andrew and I had a chat just a couple of days ago, and I said, like, Ben Nevis is probably the distillery that has the deepest funk to me. Everybody always wants to talk Campbellton when they talk funky whiskeys. Ben Nevis always has this weird sour, edging into tropical, no matter what age it is. It kind of goes into funky, dirty, almost fermenty tropical notes. Really, really cool. Here you can definitely get a lot of composty kind of root bench notes and stuff, but it's a dirty one, and the sulfur for me is a little bit of a hard one.
Yeah. Kurt, for me, this is kind of, at least palate wise, this is a level of sulfur I can handle. Like it just becomes part of the background. And I think what's cool about the palate on this Ben Nevis is that it's just so unbalanced. Like there's things going on everywhere. There's like overly malted beer. There's like bags of fruit and demerara sugar and spices. And it is going a little tropical, and I love that. But yeah, if I were judging this purely based on its nose, I think I'd be like pass. But I genuinely really like the palate on this.
Yeah, the palate redeems it for sure. And interestingly enough, too, I find a lot of times the sulfur lingers so much, and in this case, the sulfur kind of fades pretty quickly, and you're left with a pleasant sour fruitiness on the back end.
Yeah.
Finish is key, right? It's one of those things that's always an afterthought for everybody's notes and all that kind of stuff. That's what you're tasting more than you're actually tasting it on your tongue. That's what is sitting with you for all those minutes between the glass. So the finish should be one of the most important things. To me, this has got a really, really lovely finish for a nose and palate. It can be a little challenging. It's kind of surprising.
Yeah, it is. The nose. Yeah, it is.
Well, and Kurt, if we were to compare this with that
mushy mandarin at the bottom of the box, I like that note.
That's a great note.
That's a
That
mushy
old malt
mandarin.
cask,
Yeah, it's
and
exactly.
that both the nose and palate are a struggle. But with this one, it's just the palate's great. It's just the nose has got this off note. And part of me also makes me wonder if the bottle's open for a period of time, is some of that going to burn off as well?
That's interesting you should say that, because I found a bottle in the back of my whiskey cabinet downstairs. I'm just looking for some. I'm just trying to empty my cabinet because I've got so many new bottles I want to put up into it. And I've been just been trying to hill slay empty bottles at the moment. And there's one at the back there, and it's a Glenrothes Manse Reserve. So from a few years ago, it was a long time, and it's obviously at the back of a cabinet because I found it sulfured, a little bit sulfured. And it's delightful now. I must admit, it is really. I always sort of have that sort of sensitive to that sort of sulfurous note, and that's why I put it at the back of the cabinet. But now it's been sitting in the cabinet, corked, but just settling down in the glass, and now it's beautiful. I can't, no hint of that sulfur at all. It's really, so it does settle down, I'm sure, with a bit of time.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Dave, I'm going to trigger a poll here because I'm going to let everyone pick their two favorites. While they're doing that, I know we kind of alluded to them a little bit earlier, but do you mind taking a moment or two to just quickly address the others that we didn't try tonight? Like, you know, some quick pointers on the Nanto and the Tennessee, because one of the things we did promise people about tonight's tasting is that you're going to get the first crack at buying these whiskeys. We've got them all tucked aside. Most of them, we have just 5 bottles. A few of them, we've got a bit more, but not a lot. All of it was rather limited. But yeah, I'm wondering if you can maybe just take a moment to quickly highlight a few things that are interesting about them, because I think especially with the Calvados, there's a really interesting story there that's going to be hard to synthesize into just a couple of lines of text.
Yes, it is. It is a little drop of liquid history. Christian Drouin is a highly. I don't know anything about Calvados. I've only recently really started getting into French brandies, cognac, Armagnac, and Calvados on the back of doing WSET level 3 and understanding a little bit more about it all. This was, you can see on our label here, there's all the stories of Christian Drouin. This was shipped out of Le Havre to Liverpool and rested in Bristol for 22 years. It's been in, we've got a sort of shipping documents on the label here, Miss Sherry Wood. It's been in a sherry cask in Bristol, and it's what's known as that early landed Calvados. Early landed is where it's very, very much a British thing. British used to be huge sherry drinkers and still cognac drinkers. Sherry drinkers, cognac drinkers used to come over here, and we'd used to age it in the UK in Bristol. Bristol is a huge for sherry and for cognacs, and we did have it for Calvados for a little while, but the laws changed, and Calvados now has to be matured in France and bottled in France, and so this is one of the last. Went out on the 31st of December 2000, and that's on the label there, 31st of 2000. And this is a package of 5 or 8 casks that came across, and I've seen some others being bottled, and this was apparently the last cask that we bought here. So it is a little bit of liquid history. It'll never be seen again. So we've got the story there. We've got the stamp with their that's their stamp with a cow, like a camembert thing, and their lion heart is then they're not allowed to use that from a camembert logo. They're not allowed to use it. We put lots of little things that are with the company that they can't always use at the moment. But yeah, Liverpool, it was a shipping. It ended up in Bristol in a big sherry cask. 31st of December 2000 was when it was distilled. So it is a 21-year-old bottled at 41.5%, and it's beautiful. But it's just a little drop of liquid history. It's one of those casks that was offered to us, and Toby is a big fan of Calvados and brandy, and just said, no, we have got to have this. This is a little bit, this is a Calvados geeks. We're talking about whiskey geeks. This is such a geeky thing. Anyone who is into Calvados and brandy, it's a must-have. It is beautiful. Like I say, I've been really enjoying, after learning a little bit about cognac and brandies, I've really been getting into it, I must admit. And that boutique brandy, well, it's not like a brand that we're going to be really pushing, but we are looking at cognac and Armagnac and other fruit brandies and other fruit spirits, because there is so much Harvey's Bristol Cream. Yeah. That's what all our mothers and grandmothers used to drink in the old days over here.
I remember when we still sold that. Like, that's the one that comes in is it a blue bottle?
In the blue bottle, yeah. I've got a bottle in the fridge.
Yeah. I must admit, I've never been a fan of it personally, but I have come around to drinking the Finos, and I know you, Sam, and I had a little Fino break in London when I was over in the spring, and that's not something that I've ever been a fan of, just drinking, but in the right setting with the right, nibbles beside it, like, it can be brilliant.
Oh, dry sherry. Yeah, I mean the stuff that we drank over here, the English drank, was sweetened, which is cream sherry.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have Oloroso Dolce, sweetened Oloroso, which is not allowed anymore. And PX, Pedro Jimenez, which is a dessert wine, which is sweetened and drunk as a dessert wine in Spain. But most sherry is bone dry. Finos, Amontillado. I mean, yeah, Oloroso is generally a dry sherry, very dry, nutty sherry. It's the sherry that was coming over here was a cream sherry, which was been sweetened.
Can you just tell us a little bit quickly about what makes the Armoric unique that you've selected?
Yeah, that's been matured in a French mead or Chichen cask, which is completely unusual. They're French distillery. That's where they started. Brittany, French distillery. The family distillery was distilling this. It's a mead based drink, a honey based drink, which is why we have the bees nest beehive up in the top left hand corner of the tree. There's something that they've been distill out but brewing for a long time, French mead called Chichen, and they've matured this single malt in this Chichen cask, which is a little unusual. So that's why we bought this one. Mm-hmm. Armoric when Armoric sort of jumped on the Scotch bandwagon. They were the first French single malt distillery, and France is a huge player in terms of the Scotch whisky industry. They're big fans of Scotch whisky. Lots of Scotch whisky goes to France. Always been one of the world leaders of where Scotch whisky goes. It's just been changing recently, but they're still a big player, huge important player to the Scotch whisky industry. But this little distillery, they've been distilling for a long time, and Chichen mead was one of the things that they used to do, as well as lots of fruit brandies. But they thought, we'll jump on this bandwagon and we're going to make some whiskey in France and sell it. We drink a lot of whiskey over here. Why don't we make it over here? And so they started making whiskey in France. And like I say, when I first tasted it, it's not quite right. And they got Dr. Jim Swan in and said, what are we doing wrong? So Dr. Jim went and visited them and said, well, you're not doing anything wrong, but why are you trying to be Scotch? At first, because you can't be Scotch, but if we did a little tweak here and a little bit tweak here, and why don't you celebrate being French? because they went to build a Scottish distillery in France, and there was a bit of falling out as well. They built their own stills. They were going to buy Scottish stills, and they didn't in the end. They went with French. And said, well, why don't you go local? Why don't you use local ingredients? Why don't you try and put your French stamp on it? And just made a few tweaks in their fermentation, and just nothing major, just a little tweak here and a little tweak there, and just some pointers, and they have turned it around. And the stuff that they're making is absolutely superb. I've tasted lots recently, and I was over in, say, for Whiskey Live Paris, and I went and sought some more out, and yeah, they really are making some beautiful whiskey, and they're celebrating French grain. They're using French grain, they're using French maltsters, they're using French cooperages, and they're using local cask, and they're celebrating being French and not trying to emanate being Scotch. And it has changed the distillery around. I've had some cognac cask and some Calvados cask stuff from them. Oh God, it was just beautiful, a liquid. Oh God, I couldn't get enough of it. Just and you can't find it over here. It's starting to come back over here. They used to be marketed by Gordon and MacPhail in the UK here, and they dropped them, and so they never had any representation over here. But they have sorted it around. I think they've been working with Berry Brothers now. No, they're working with Penderyn, and so it's starting to come back. It is good stuff. Yeah.
Maybe one last little nugget here each about the Tennessee and the Nantu, because we, much as Kevin said, it would have been nice to try them all. 11 whiskeys might have been a bit much for one tasting.
Amateur.
Tennessee Rye is a Tennessee Rye from, because we spelt it without the E. So that tells you where that distillery is made in Tennessee. It's not brought in, is actual rye whiskey made in the state of Tennessee, and it is a Tennessee rye whiskey. It goes through the Lincoln County process, or charcoal leaching as it used to be known. And this one has been finished over here in sherry Oloroso quarter casks, which is why it's got a bit of a sherry funk to it as well, which is absolutely delicious. And the Nantou is, like I say, this distillery that was built in the 80s. They sent the guy, they sent a Taiwanese guy over to learn how to make whiskey in Scotland in the 80s. And so he came over to Speyside and learned how to make whiskey, and then came back and they said, well, we're not going to make whiskey in Taiwan at the moment. It's easier to import it, so don't worry. But they built this distillery in the 80s for this guy to come back and run, and then he just left it. So Nantou is in a beautiful region of Taiwan, a sort of national park in the mountains, and there's a sun and the moon lake, which is being depicted on our label here. And Nantou is a state-run winery. They make a lot of wines over there. And then Kavalan started making whiskey in Taiwan, and then the state think, well, maybe we should be making whiskey here. We've got the distillery, let's start it. And that guy who was taught to make whiskey in the 1980s went back and started this distillery, and he's there running this distillery today. And so he learned to make whiskey in Scotland in the 80s, and they're following that sort of style. Nothing's changed. This is a peated, they're peated malt, and it is a refill bourbon cask. It's just beautiful. It's lightly peated. It's just stunning whiskey. And it's just like stepping back in time and drinking some of it. It's just 5 years old, but it's just, it's like stepping back in time, tasting those sort of.
If we have any left over, Dave, after we let people have their crack at it, you never know, we might put that into a future tasting. I'm going to quickly share the poll here because I know some of you might be off to dinner here shortly, or in Dave's case, looking to end what has become a rather long day. But not surprisingly to me, the Millstone really ran away with the favorites on round one. The Aberlour and blended grain finishing second and third. And then much more spread out round two, the Aberlour, the second favorite, but the Millstone and Ben Nevis coming in tying for second place, which is quite cool. So almost everything got some votes except for the birthday blend, but I think that in some ways is a little bit unfair to it because I think it had some stiff competition there. And Dave, before I put you on the spot, Kurt, I'm wondering if you might be willing to share with us what your favorites were for tonight's tasting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not the hugest grain guy, but I absolutely adore that grain. I know it's 45 years old, doesn't matter. It's a brilliant grain whiskey, really, really awesome. Aberlour has some really cool tones I'm really digging. I think that's kind of sliding up towards my number 2, but I can't lie, before that, it was probably a toss-up between the Ellsburn or the Birthday 10. The Millstone's super cool. It's one of those drams I want occasionally at the end of a night, something big and monolithic like that. But I love the way that smokiness just kind of rose up over time the longer it was in the glass for the birthday blend. Super cool. And that Ellsburn, man, at first I was like, yeah, it's okay. The longer it's been in the glass, the better it's gotten. And the palate is just absolutely awesome at this point for me. So they were kind of surprising to me, but I think, honestly, I'm more in love with the first 3 than I am with anything else.
That's really cool. And Kurt, I would add unexpected.
For sure it is.
From you. Dave, I'm going to put you on the spot here too and say, if you had to pick 2, which would they be?
Well, yeah, I'm going to go Clynelish because my Clynelish is not corked, and the Clynelish is just spectacular. Mm-hmm. And it's a real treat because you don't see that. But I'm also going to pick the Millstone as my number 2 then, because I think the Millstone is so good. But like I say, I've just gone back to the Ellsburn, and that is just, I mean, that is, it's sitting in the glass. There's just a smidge left because I've drained them all, but it's just so full of pollen. It's just so floral now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that Millstone is spectacular.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm actually pretty torn with this range. I think if I had to pick one of these to just drink on a regular basis, to be honest, I think it might be the Aberlour. I love the kind of oxidative tropical notes in it. The blended grain was good to me, but I think I'd get bored with it after a while. The Ellsburn was really surprising to me how good it was. Because again, I've got a bit of a Scotch-centric bias because that's most of what we taste and most of what we talk about. And a lot of these Euro whiskeys or single malts made in other countries they're often good, but they're usually a bit pricey and so hard sells. And so I have a hard time getting excited about them, but I was really impressed by that one. But I love the blend. I love 10-year-old grain and 25-year-old Ardbeg. I mean, that to me is also like classic Sam Simmons being a little bit mischievous and playful and kind of F you to like people. But I got to go Millstone for number 2. I mean, it's just such a cool style of sherried whiskey, and it's not over tiring and overtaxing of the palate for how big and how deep it is. So yeah, I'm in the back half. I'm Aberlour and Millstone are my 1 and my 1 and 2.
I just go and pour a little drop more Aberlour, and it is really lovely, isn't it?
Unfortunately for the rest of us, Dave, all of our samples stop at 15 milliliters or 1.5 cl. So there's no reason.
I've only poured little tiny drams here.
Yeah, but don't feel so bad. I can always finish my night with a little bit of 1964 Strath Isla if I need to. So I mean, and that's just what's in arm's reach. I'm sure there's something else here that I could tempt myself with. Now, Dave,
absolutely.
Before we move on, before we let you go, I do want to just quickly mention one thing. We did mention to you both before the tasting and in the tasting, we're going to give people who took part in this tasting a first chance to buy the bottles because most of them are quite limited. I will likely tomorrow or failing that Monday, send an email to everybody who bought a ticket or tickets for tonight's tasting with a way for you to order them. And unless there's more demand than bottles, you'll get what you ask for, but we might have to draw names for one or two of them, subject to availability. So give me a couple of days to get that out to you. We're kind of busy moving stuff around the shop and painting it and trying to make it look pretty. So that's taking up a bit of time, but I will get to you by Monday at the latest. Dave, a couple of quick spoilers for us. I mean, you and I were talking before we got going here tonight. We've got some darkness coming, and we've got a few Scotch whiskeys coming and some rums coming. And I'm wondering if there's anything here that people should really be keeping an eye on that's coming down the pipeline in the months ahead.
Okay, so the Scotch that you've got coming will be from our. What, did you pick any Scotch up from the Oz series?
I didn't grab any of the Oz whiskeys. I'm not even sure we were offered the Oz whiskeys, to be totally honest with you. But we were offered, I know we've got some, I think there's a Clynelish that's coming, a Glen. Man, what were we talking about earlier? That seems so long.
Okay, so that would be the that's our next series, which we haven't spoken about publicly at all. It's only gone to our distributors. It's a collection of American whiskies, American brandies, and some Scotch whiskies, which is a 9-year-old Daluan.
Yeah.
Which has been finished in first fill Maker's Mark casks. We've got a 11-year-old Strathmill, which has been finished in Maker's Mark cask, and a 12-year-old Clynelish, and they are those three there. Four. There's a 23-year-old Glenlivet as well. Secret Speyside, my favourite label on because I'm on it, and. Those four are absolutely spectacular, and I could drink the Daluan is one of my favourite distilleries. Ask me what my favourite whiskey is, and it's normally the next one. But Daluan is one of those distilleries that I love going to. And the Clynelish that we bottled, and this is just a young Clynelish, and it is blending stock, but it's spectacular. Some of the Clynelish that we bought, we've had some in some of the tastings that we've been here. We just, they were fillings, but we put these into first fill American oak casks to finish basically because they were so light, and we like them, but we've just changed them a little bit rather than do the same stuff that we did last time. And so these have all been in first fill, and we've also got a 23-year-old Springbank that we've also, and that's a marriage of Madeira and sherry that then we put back into first fill bourbon, and it's just big and dirty Springbank, but like I'd expect at that sort of age. The Speyside and the Highlands for me, I mean, Springbank, and it's okay. It's great, but it's not my cup of tea. I must admit, it's not my cup of tea. Springbank 10-year-old is my cup of tea. 15-year-old is my cup of tea. 12-year-old cask strength, the standard stuff that they do. Some of these big old casks. It's not my cup of tea, I must admit. Just like, it's not my, the young Speyside, just delicious. The old Speyside, spectacular. But this is all coming along a series of American whiskies, which you're not taking, which is two malts, 3 bourbons, and 5 rye whiskies, and all young American distilleries. Some of them I haven't heard of. Some of them I love. Copperworks, I think their single malt from Copperworks is just spectacular. Just 3 years old, and I bought another bottle of it. The Master of Malt bottled another cask, and I've almost killed it in a few weekends. And it's just so good. I just keep going back to it. It's so much in a 3-year-old because they do like 4 weeks of fermentation. Yeah, I said 4 weeks. Yeah, 1 week fermentation at normal temperatures, and then 3 weeks at a very low temperature. Just spectacular. A full-on geekery of 2 ryes from a little Colorado distillery, 291 distillery. I don't know if you've come across it. Just
we've had that. We've had that at our shop.
Cracking rye whiskey that they do. So this is 100% malted rye, It's just why did we do it? Because it's just an exercise in geekery. I mean, this is what we are. So one cask was 100% Colorado rye, malted rye, and the other one is 100% German rye. Because a lot of the German rye, in fact, a lot of the American distilleries, like the big commercial rye distilleries, are distilling German rye, so they decided to do a bit of each. So identical whiskies, identical maturations, distillation techniques, pure exercise in terroir just for a giggle. Because that's the sort of geeks we are, and they're spectacular. And everything's been bottled at cask strength, and that's good. I don't know what you've got with the Australian whiskey. I can't remember the scotches that we put out with the Australian whiskies. There's a 25-year-old Invergordon.
Yeah, I don't know that we were offered any of the Australian whiskey, which, anyway, not to worry about that. But lastly, quickly, Darkness, the recent release of Darkness, because I know that is coming.
Okay, well, I can't remember what's in Darkness. Okay, I must admit.
Then we'll let you go on that one, because there is some stuff coming, and I know initially we looked at it and the prices were kind of eye-watering, and then I think someone forgot to remove a zero or something in it. It got a lot.
I'm just trying to get up a file right now to see if I've got it listed on this one.
While Dave's hunting there, I got to make a plug on a whiskey here from Boutique-y that at least Shawn and I think a couple of the other staff were super behind. If you haven't tried it, Dave can probably speak a little bit more to it. It's a buckwheat whiskey from Edu or whoever it is.
Edu.
It's a 14-year-old, and it was unbelievable. It blew me away with how cool it was.
It's not even whiskey. It can't be called whiskey. It's buckwheat spirit.
Buckwheat spirit, that's right, on the label, yeah. Awesome. Absolutely awesome. Before it disappears, grab a bottle.
This is it here.
Yeah, the Edu, that's buckwheat, 14-year-old buckwheat matured in French oak. So buckwheat is a pseudo grain. It acts like a grain, but not technically a grain. So we can't actually call it whiskey. They do in France. They shouldn't do. They're not allowed to. But they've been getting away with it. Yeah, Edu, that's superb. That was from our Norwest series. No
one gets to tell the French what to do, I don't think. That's part of their national character. Well, so listen,
what Darknesses have you got coming? Have you got Balmenic, Blair Athol, Craigellachie, Cambus, Clynelish, Glengarry's?
That sounds familiar. I'm just going to have a quick peek here. But that'll be something I can circle back on, and we'll maybe reach out to you to see about the possibility of a tasting at some point after they arrive. But I know that there's a small list of them here. Oh, here we go. Those sound familiar. I'm just pulling up the list. We didn't grab everything, but yeah, there's like Blair Athol 13 and 15, Kalila 12, Dalyuen, Dufton, Lafroig, and a few others as part of the list. Maybe a distillery that starts with the letter A that I don't want to mention for fear of provoking a trigger warning amongst people. But
Darkness, mostly Oloroso, but we've got a few others, bits and pieces, Moscatel and PX in there, and I think we've got some other casks coming through, but generally it's Oloroso, but we've been playing with some other ones coming through as well.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I know it's now almost 2 a.m. where you are, so
yes, sir.
I want to say again a huge thank you. And I didn't get the memo, but you wore a checkered shirt, which is kind of my MO. And I went with like playful t-shirt tonight. And I just want to say, like, I kind of feel like you were trying to sort of be in our world, be in Andrew's world, in the checked dress shirt tonight, because you're looking pretty sharp.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. The beard too has filled out quite a bit, and it's
I've trimmed it. Yeah, I've trimmed it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's looking good. It's looking good.
I've trimmed it and tidied it up a bit because I was looking a bit messy.
Yeah, well, you're looking very dapper there, Dave. Kurt, thanks for joining us tonight. Dave, as
Hi,
always,
lovely to see you.
thank you for your time, and we will be in touch when we've got some other new stuff to play with to line something up. But until then, say hi to everybody at Adam, say hi to Sam, and really appreciate your time and staying up late for us.
My absolute pleasure. Been lovely to see you all. Thank you very much for joining me before your dinner tonight. I know it's quite early for you for a whiskey tasting on a Saturday night, but
Time well spent. So thanks a lot, sir.
have a great evening.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night, y'all.